Welcome back to CBS Mornings. Later today, the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th assault on the Capitol plans to release its full report. It follows a vote on Monday, a big one, really a historic vote, recommending that the Justice Department pursue possible criminal charges against former President Donald Trump. That kind of vote had never happened before. The 4 suggested charges include inciting an insurrection. The committee's investigation lasted nearly 18 months. It collected about 1,200 interviews and more than 1 million documents. And California Democrat Adam Schiff was a member of that committee, and the congressman joins us now. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Great to be with you.
I've heard you say that you believe there is enough publicly available evidence to charge the former president. Given that being the case, in your view, do you think he will be charged by the DOJ?
That's a very good question. I think it depends on whether the Justice Department lives up to what the Attorney General committed at the beginning of the investigation, and that is that Donald Trump would be treated like any other American, that there was one standard of the rule of law, and that the Justice Department would follow the evidence wherever it leads. Well, it's led to Donald Trump.
So under what circumstances, then, what calculations would the DOJ, the special counsel, decide not to indict?
Well, under circumstances in which the department departs from that policy and decides, you know, we need a higher burden of proof for a former president. And in this case, either we're not willing to take the risk, or we decide that it would be too divisive, it would look too political to prosecute the former president. The Justice Department took the position while he was in office that you can't indict a sitting president. Now, I think that's a flawed interpretation of the Constitution. But if you take that position and then you later decide that even when a president leaves office, you still can't prosecute them for crimes because it would be too controversial, then they're basically immune. They're immune.
Well, so how damaging, in your view, would it be to our effort to heal and restore a sense of normalcy in the aftermath of January 6th? How important is it that they go through, under a normal set of circumstances, with an indictment that you think is deserved?
If the Justice Department concludes that the evidence is there, that they can prove that he committed crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, he should be indicted.
Yeah.
The Founding Fathers would have never accepted the idea that a president is somehow unprosecutable, that they can commit any crime and you can't hold them accountable. The precedent it would set, given the laundry list of likely offenses this president committed, would be too dangerous, because any subsequent president could decide, I could do whatever I want.
Do you believe they're moving too slowly?
I believe they have moved way too slowly. They moved quickly when it came to the foot soldiers, the people that broke into the Capitol, assaulted police officers. But for the higher-ups and for other lines of effort to overturn the election, they have taken way too long.
Isn't it good to be deliberate and even meticulous in how they approach this?
Because,
it is. Given the stakes, yeah.
Absolutely. But we're almost 2 years from the events of that day.
That makes sense.
That's a long time.
How difficult a decision was this for you all to reach this conclusion? Listen, we saw all the evidence. We hear unprecedented and historic. I think it's important for the people to know the time and care that was put in this. Was this a difficult decision? Because Donald Trump says political witch hunt, there's no there. It's all about politics.
It was certainly a somber decision to make, not one we made lightly. But at the end of the day, it wasn't difficult in that there wasn't really a difference of opinion among the members. There was a strong consensus that the evidence supports criminal referrals. We believe that with respect to inciting an insurrection and conspiracy to defraud and obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to lie, that Donald Trump committed all of these offenses. And as the Congress itself was the victim of some of them, our democracy, all of them, that we had an obligation to report what we knew to the Justice Department.
What are we going to learn from this full report scheduled to be released later today that we don't already know?
A lot. Now, it's a lot that fills in some of the missing pieces. And with the report, we're going to begin rolling out transcripts. So you'll see why we don't find Tony Arnado, the deputy chief of staff, very credible when he says essentially that he was unaware of the propensity for violence that day. You'll hear a lot more of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony and other key witnesses. And I guarantee there'll be some very interesting new information in the report and even more so in the transcripts that we release.
Could you show us a bit of it now? Could you give us a little bit of a tease more?
Well, you'll see why we're concerned that that witnesses may have been interfered with or an attempt to influence them. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll hear, much more Very interesting but granular detail about these multiple lines of effort to overturn the election.
Can we talk about President Zelensky coming in today to make his case in front of Congress and the American people? There seems to be some concern about Ukraine fatigue now, about spending and the money that is being sent to Ukraine. Where do you stand on that? Do you think, at what point does the U.S. say, I'm so sorry, but there's really nothing more we can do? Or do you think we need to stay in for the long haul, and it's been a long haul, for however long it takes?
I think we need to support Ukraine for however long it takes. If the Ukrainian people can fight and not fatigue, then we should be able to remain steadfast with them. They're fighting for their own democracy, their own sovereignty, but they're fighting for the principle that powerful nations shouldn't be able to simply redraw the map using military force. And I think democracy more broadly is really at risk in this conflict.
And what do you say to people who say, yeah, but we have problems in this country that aren't being addressed that could use some financial help? What do you say to that?
That is absolutely true. There are dramatic unmet needs at home, and we ought to meet them. But at the same time, if we allow Russia to invade an ally, it's going to invite more nations. Maybe it invites China to invade Taiwan. It's going to be destabilizing, dangerous, and that will ultimately be a danger to the United States, and we could spend a lot more trying to defend ourselves if this precedent is set.
Congressman, I want to talk about you for a moment here. The Republicans, as they take control in 2023, are widely expected to remove you from your committee position on the Intel Committee. Dianne Feinstein also questions about whether she'll run in 2024. That would open up a historic seat there in the state of California for Senate. Do you plan to run for Senate for that seat?
Well, first let me address the committee issue. This is something Kevin McCarthy is threatening to do to try to get the votes of the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. And while I have particular interest in whether I remain chair or ranking member of Intel, the bigger concern for me, frankly, is if McCarthy becomes Speaker and the next presidential election is close and they lose, he'll overturn the results. And to me, that's far more serious an issue than what happens to my committees. In terms of Senate, if Senator Feinstein, who I admire greatly, decides to retire, I'm giving it very serious consideration, getting a lot of encouragement back home.
Do you think he's going to become Speaker, Kevin McCarthy?
I think if I had to guess that he becomes Speaker, but that he doesn't remain Speaker.
Why?
The easy decision is the first one. The hard decision is when you actually have to decide policy. And there...
Why wouldn't he remain Speaker?
I think one of the kind of hidden stories of the midterms is that a lot of these QAnon right-wing crazy Republicans won Republican primaries in deeply red districts. We didn't hear about them that much because they weren't in competitive general elections. They're coming. The crazy caucus in the Republican Party in Congress is going to grow. At the same time, there are a few moderates, and they're going to be clashing. The first decision Kevin McCarthy makes is going to alienate some of them. And let me just say this, they have the same narrow majority we did, and he's no Nancy Pelosi.
Congressman Schiff, thank you so much. We appreciate you.